early, I guess, right?
Let me know, yeah.
Seems like my music gig is getting more popular by a person every time.
Yes, exactly. We're all good looking?
I think we're good, John, yep.
Okay, I call the meeting to order. It is 1 p.m. Any conflicts of interest? Any declarations of conflict of interest by anyone? Seeing none. Questions and information arising out of the minutes or not otherwise on the agenda? Anyone? Seeing none. I need a mover and a seconder for the adoption of minutes of May 27, 2021. Lisa, moved by Lisa and seconded by Ian. Thank you. Resolved that the minutes of the regular meeting as presented be hereby approved. All in favor? Approved. Motion to accept the June 24th, 2021 meeting, moved by Rick, seconded by Ian. Resolved that the agenda of the regular meeting as presented be approved. All in favor? Approved. We have a special meeting today, this afternoon, and we have some special guests. We normally don't have a lot of special guests, but we're quite excited about these two people. And I'm going to start first with Michael Nadeau. I see Michael is on the screen, and we welcome you, Michael. I'm just going to say a couple words about Michael, and not that he needs a lot of introduction here, but Michael Nadeau heads one of the most important agencies in Sault Ste. Marie. Michael is the Chief Executive Officer of the District Social Services Administration Board. He has been instrumental in helping people, building lives, and strengthening community over many years. Michael is also here, I think, with Travis Anderson, yes, and he is Director of Tourism and Community Development. And I open the door for your presentation. We look forward to it. And welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the board and Chief Stevenson. We really appreciate this opportunity to come and speak to you briefly today about the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan. As the board is maybe aware, Community Safety and Wellbeing plans initiated through some really innovative thinking amongst the police chiefs a few years ago. That got passed into the municipal planning sector. So the city of Sault Ste. Marie was tasked with developing a community safety and wellbeing plan, and also tasked with making sure that it had broad consultation and broad partnership engagement across the community. The process that we undertook locally for that to happen was we ran the plan through the Algoma Leadership Table. And the Algoma Leadership Table is a multi-sector organization where we come together every 2 weeks to 1 month just to try to solve collective community issues. It involves all the public sector leaders in the community, which Chief Stevenson and myself are on that. So the Algoma Leadership Table undertook the exercise of developing the community safety and wellbeing plan. We tasked Lauren Dockstader, who was the social equity coordinator with Future Sault Ste. Marie. She reported to Travis Anderson, and then she transitioned over to the DSAB in January with developing that plan. There was extensive community consultation that occurred across a variety of partner agencies and community locations. So Lauren presented that plan back to the Algoma Leadership Table. We finalized it, and Travis now would like to bring, he's going to go through the plan with you, but we can go through the plan just to make sure that police services, the board is fully aware of some of the work that we're going to be undertaking collectively over the next few years. And then Travis will be taking that to City Council as well for further ratification. So I asked Travis Anderson if he can kind of walk us through some of the document and some of the meat. He may need to require to share his screen, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure if that capacity is set up.
Yeah, Mike, it looks like it is. So I'll give it a try here. And if anybody has any issues, just let me know. Okay, can everybody see the first slide here, which says overview?
Yep, I can
Yes.
see it.
Perfect. So just give me 2 seconds here. As Mike said, Lauren Dockstader was the individual that was responsible, and she did a lot of the heavy lifting on this with consultation with the ALT. Just quickly, we were informed of the need to, we were informed of the need to conduct the community safety wellbeing plan back in 2020. And as Mike said, worked with the ALT to do that. The plan is legislated by the Police Services Act. And sorry, I'm not sure, this seems to be jumping on me here, so apologies about that. And it was collaborative effort to pull it together. What we're hoping to receive today, just as by way of background, we will be bringing this report to council on June 28th at the next council meeting, as well as the downtown safety strategy as well. So we're looking for a resolution to support this plan from the Police Services Board today if possible. So as mentioned, just in terms of more background and guiding principles, the guiding principles, it's evidence-based and evaluation. Shared collaborative approach, community engagement, wellness, and diversity and inclusion. In terms of the consultation, which is a major portion of this study, Lauren worked with numerous community partners, including an in-person survey. Sorry, I'm not sure why, I've got some technical issues here. Sorry, she worked with multiple partners, including attending a in-person survey at the Soup Kitchen and Community Center in James Street and Gore Street in August and September 2020. Also completed an online survey for frontline staff associated with an NRC in September 2020, and also included Indigenous community stakeholders, and did some in-depth consultation with the social equity team from December 2020 through to February 2021. Finally, it was brought to the Algoma Leadership Table in March 2021 for approval and ratification from that group. Identified through the course of the work were priority risks, including mental health and addiction and poverty. The mental health and addiction issues are typically co-occurring outcome and result in numerous other issues that we're seeing throughout the community. And the areas of poverty that were addressed include housing, food security, workforce entry, crisis diversion, and resolution. So I'm going to go through these in a little bit more depth. So identified through ALT were numerous leads on each variety of issues. And with respect to continuum of care, the outcomes are the prevention of aftercare services, and that the providers are knowledgeable and informed on the models of care that are trauma-informed and recovery-oriented. Clients and/or services users receive high-quality treatment. In emergency department, high users are provided with access to community-based mental health and addiction services. So the main actions are all service providers are engaged to provide holistic healthcare services and supported with up-to-date and evidence-based information, resources, and tools for working with patients, including their families. There's also heavy reliance on some of the recommendations of the drug strategy, including to adapt the prescribed Health Quality Ontario based on those recommendations and support the provincial opioid strategy. Intensive treatment crisis services and withdrawal management services are adequately staffed and housed for potential expansion. On the youth services front, we're looking to provide youth with appropriate recreational programming available to them. Alternative forms of justice are available for youth. Parents and youth are educated on resiliency and coping skills, and youth in transition between systems are supported and services are available to them. The main thing that we're looking at here is providing barrier-free, safe access to recreational leisure activities and social programming in neighborhoods, encouraging school boards to look at alternatives to expulsion and suspension for absenteeism, and advocate for youth justice diversion programs. We're also looking at ways to provide youth with coping skills in dealing with trauma and allow them with navigation-based support as they go through a variety of different care systems. And in terms of community-based supports, in essence, we're looking at wraparound services that are available for individuals and families, and essentially looking at harm reduction strategies and support services from those with lived experience. So we are looking at integrating community-led partnerships to leverage collective resources and primary care, mental health and addiction and social services support, provide opportunities for increased safety and support for persons involved in street-level sex trade, enhance current peer support, as well as service delivery for clients is centered around operations for treatment and wraparound services. So what that means is operating within the time of services that the clients need it, and not necessarily a 9-to-5 operation. Advocacy and policy, a wide range of community and residential withdrawal management and inpatient, outpatient treatment services are available in Sault Ste. Marie. All elementary and secondary schools are adequately staffed with mental health professionals, and local institutions and businesses are prepared in harm reduction techniques. So that's a continuation to advocate for provincial government, federal and provincial government's approval for enhanced withdrawal management service, increased mental health and addiction staffing throughout the schools. We're also encouraging local institutions and businesses to integrate Naxalon in their first aid policies and support collaborative plans for timely needle retrieval, including public signage in higher risk areas, and needle disposal at containers in local businesses and institutions in high traffic public areas. In terms of research, we're looking at that each sector is aware of drug use data, that there is evidence-based information on viability of safe consumption sites in Sault Ste. Marie, and that in terms of actions, continue public health surveillance activities and make data available across all sectors, and investigate the benefits of a safe consumption site in Sault Ste. Marie. In terms of public education and awareness, the public is informed and the community is ready to engage in drug strategy and mental health initiatives and messaging. And we're looking at developing a common communication strategy that includes public education awareness and services related to substance disorders and concurrent disorders intended to reduce stigma, as well as continuing to promote Naxalon awareness and public Naxalon treatment. Moving on now to poverty. The first area that we're going to examine is housing. The outcomes here are low-income people living in housing that meets all appropriate standards. All low-income persons are housed in affordable units, and housing is available to at-risk population. Increase availability of affordable housing stock, particularly one-bedroom affordable units. Increase enforcement of the municipal property standards, and implement housing first model in the community. Food security was another item that we looked at, including ensuring that low-income earners are food literate. The public is educated with respect to impact to food security. Nutritious food is available to low-income people, and organizations that are supplying food to low-income people are distributing nutritious food. So we want to increase supply of nutritious food distributed by Harvest Algoma. We'd like an access point for nutritious food established within walking distance for all neighborhoods. Expand the number of community kitchens, community gardens available for use by the public, and communicate accessible food and food literacy programming to the public, as well as creating a shared data collection tool for use by food security organizations. We also looked at workforce entry, raising awareness of living wage for public and private sector, and recognizing employers that do provide this. And I noticed earlier this week, Village Media and Sioux Today announced that they are a living wage employer. So we're looking for more partners like that. Design learning supports for high school and first generation post-secondary students to increase graduation rates. Design support for those entering the workplace to assist with navigating employment, workplace opportunities for students. Expand bridges out of poverty to support workforce entry. Create a data collection to track the number of employers supporting training and hiring of low-income persons, create labor-specific skills to satisfy high-level demands within multiple sectors. Crisis diversion and resolution. We wanted to increase awareness of community programs and sports that are accessible to any community member in need, maintain appropriate funding of these programs, including emergency support programs and other social assistance, support the basic income guarantee and living wage, and free access to non-food basic needs are publicly available. The outcomes: unmet needs of the community members are addressed and gaps in services are responded to by community organizations. Finally, with respect to the implementation of the plan, the prioritized focus of the community safety well-being plan lies in the areas of mental health and addiction and poverty. Ongoing work for this will be identified through the ALT and rely heavily on the recommendations of the Progress on Impact report from 2020 and the Sault Ste. Marie Area Drug Strategy, as well as the Central Algoma Mental Health and Addictions Planning Table and the Poverty Reduction Roundtable. So as we move forward, this plan and the implementation of it is going to continue to rely on multi-sector stakeholder to ensure that the plan is implemented and that there is collaboration across all parties so that the entirety of the plan is implemented and all parties are aware of the progress of the plan. We are also looking at housing and food security opportunities and the ability of employment and employment interactions and to increase employment for those that are at risk. And we are looking at joint responsibilities and regular review of the community plan will be primarily led through the City of Sault Ste. Marie, although we do have the ability to delegate, and as this is a plan under the police services legislation, there may be a future recommendation to delegate some of this work to the Police Services Board. And as background, when we first started this plan, it was initially tasked with the Police Services Board, but through consultation, I think with CAO White, it was delegated to the Social Equity Coordinator, and we did take this on. With that, I'll conclude my presentation and open it up to any questions.
Any questions or comments? Thank you, Travis.
Yes, I think it was an excellent presentation that bounced around all over the place video-wise. It was hard to try and keep straight. I have one question, and that is your projection of affordable housing. You know, are we still going to continue to plan and project for affordable housing to be clumped into areas where all the less privileged, let's say, individuals are all living together in these low income housing, although the standards are increased? Because I attended a meeting about 10 years ago that said it's the worst possible thing that you could do for people that really need help is to gang them all up together and plunk them down in a building or buildings where there's not really the examples of what an average family, for example, is exposed to within the city. So if it's geared to income housing and it's going to be row housing or it's going to be all clumped together, I don't think that that's an environment that's healthy for the community or for the citizens who would have to live there.
Mike?
Thank you for the question. So what you're referring to, Ian, is a really, really dated model, and I agree with you 100%. So those models where there's row housing and it's all lumped into one area, that's a model from the 70s and even from the 60s. The new model of affordable housing now that we're moving into is we call mixed market. And it's also a strategy on sustainability. So we'll, as an example, if we put a 21 unit building up, a percentage are designated affordable, a percentage are designated deep dive RGI, and a percentage would be designated full market. So that you're blending that building, because as we've demonstrated in this presentation, the two priority areas that we're looking at are poverty and mental health and addictions. And if I agree with you 100%, if you start to increase your poverty density, there are social problems that occur as a result of that density strategy. So that is not going to be occurring en masse anymore.
Good. Thank you.
Any other questions, Lisa?
Thanks, Chair. To Travis, probably regarding the data collection in terms of both in the presentation, drug use and employers who are providing employment for people that possibly facing barriers. So who is collecting the data and who is the owner of that data? And are you utilizing data from the community wellness bus as well?
Yeah, to answer your question, I think when we were undertaking this plan, the social equity coordinator was collecting, the bulk of that data. He recently transitioned out of the role, and I know Mike and his team are currently in the process of looking for a replacement for that. I believe, Mike, you can probably expand upon that. So my assumption is it would continue within that role.
Yeah, Lauren left. She got an excellent opportunity at Tsinghua University. So, we're in the recruitment phase. I believe that there was 32 applicants when the competition closed. So we're going to be rehiring. So we're looking at the DSAB will be the holder of the data, but we're looking at ownership being more of a collective model.
Okay.
And I also, the DSAB also contracts with the Innovation Center as our DAC, our data analytics coordinator. So all that data goes over to the Innovation Center, unidentifiable, and then they would report back and start to organize it to make mess of the messy.
Okay. Okay.
Community wellness bus, again, we're running it for the first 3 months, and then we're going to start to analyze the data because there's no benchmark or baseline data to be able to compare that to. So we're really starting from ground zero there.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Travis.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Travis?
I just have one. As I had mentioned, so this report is going to council, and we have a downtown safety study that's also going to council. And Chief Tom Baer understood I was going to be at this meeting, so he just asked if you could take one last look at the downtown safety strategy document that I believe he provided. So,
Not a problem.
thank you.
One last comment I have, and having an educational background and knowing that the wraparound service is quite essential, and certainly the schools have very sometimes limited funds to carry on the mental health leader role that would be in conjunction with the wraparound service. So having said all of that, one of the challenges has always been the funding, because every organization, we went through the silos of each organization, and the funding becomes an issue. But I'm very happy to see that all of those things have been put in there, and certainly I know that challenge will be met, and certainly some advocacy from the ministries and the governments will be in order for that to make it really work, because I think that is one of the key issues of making it all work, the wraparound service with all the organizations and the funding. And maybe a comment on that, Mike or Travis?
Absolutely. There's the wraparound support, and we're looking at housing first, which I can speak to, or the mental health and addictions. And I think that the community is at a critical stage right now. It's no secret to the board of the crisis that we're currently undertaking. But just yesterday at the Algoma leadership table on our conversation, we talked about how can we start to collectively share resources in a more strategic way related to mental health and addictions. And we also discussed the DSAB. Chief Stevenson came to our DSAB board last Thursday evening and presented on some of the challenges that we're having within the community around community safety and well-being and Bill C-75. So our board will be passing resolution in July and communicating following the mayor's lead and communicating to the premier and the prime minister regarding our concerns and trying to advocate for some change to that legislation as well to increase mental health and addictions funding supports for the community. And we've asked all the Algoma leadership boards to pass a similar resolution so that we're all speaking from the same that same context. So we are committed to sharing resources. However, there needs to be a significant investment of mental health and addiction services and resources made in the community if we're going to pull out of the crisis that we're in my opinion.
Thank you, Mike. Any other comments, questions? Well, we thank you today. Seeing none, we thank you very much for coming in. You're always welcome here, and certainly good luck with the plan, and certainly you have our support in the future as well. So thank you. And if you're welcome to stay for the meeting, then we understand if you don't.
Thank you very much for your time. I know I have to leave, but I appreciate the offer.
Okay.
Then I do have one item. I don't know if it's possible to get a resolution from the board supporting this plan.
Yes, we can certainly do that, and we will, and then we will present that to you. Okay, at the next.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Travis. Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Okay. At this point, we have another special guest, and again, we welcome Sheila. And I apologize for any how can I say it? My pronunciation isn't the best. So Sheila Washkanishke, member. Did I say that okay?
Oh yes, terribly mispronounced, but yes, it was a good effort.
Thank you.
Great effort.
And I apologize.
That's okay.
Is a member of the Batchewana First Nation in Northern Ontario. She is a Bear Clan and participates in ceremonies that are part of the Anishinaabe tradition. Sheila is the founder and director of Indigenous Sphere to Empowerment, an Indigenous NGO located in Northwest Ontario. Prior to founding her own organization, she worked for Anishinaabe Aski Nation in Thunder Bay, Ontario for 4.5 years as a gambling awareness program coordinator. Over the past 35 years, she has had the opportunity to speak domestically and internationally at various conferences and that have taken her to Moscow, Australia, New Zealand, and most recently, Istanbul and Turkey. She speaks on a variety of topics, which include gambling, 60 Scoop, program development in First Nation communities, and human sex trafficking. Sheila is a survivor of international sex trafficking, survivor of the 60 Scoop, and first-generation survivor of the residence school. Her father attended the Spanish residential school. As an Indigenous two-spirited woman, she is committed to the restoration of health to the international Indigenous community and encourages the revitalization of culture. She holds a master's degree in environmental studies from York University in Toronto, Ontario, with her field of study being education and area of concentration being cultural reclamation, revitalization, and environmental experiential learning. She plans to pursue a PhD in cultural anthropology next fall. We welcome Sheila to our meeting, to our city, and we look forward to our conversation with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm just gonna pull up the PowerPoint that I have here so that I can share it with you folks. I am hoping that I'm going to be sliding through the slides pretty quickly because I have over 70 slides. I usually tell a story within those slides, and usually the presentations are about 3 hours long. Then I have about 40 minutes here. So not sure how to, I want to actually, this was for Sioux College a while ago, and I think it was Rick who recommended me to the board. So I would also like to thank you folks for the invitation to present to the staff of your institution, your organization, and to acknowledge that we are the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe people of the Batchewana First Nation and Garden River First Nation of the Robinson-Huron Treaty. I'm a member of the Batchewana band and come from the Rankin Reserve in Sault Ste. Marie, and I feel good about being here today and representing my community. I also want to acknowledge the recent findings of our lost children from the Kamloops Indian Residential School in BC, and also acknowledge the finding of the recently unmarked grave sites at the Maraval Residential School in the Capel Valley, Saskatchewan. May the children who were killed and buried at these unmarked grave sites find peace as they return home to their communities, and that we all heal together as we process this violent historical past of the Canadian government and imposed religious indoctrination, cultural genocide. There's left a deep scar on Canada and our communities who seek to find peace amidst the chaos. So again, thank you for having me here, and to share with you over the next half hour to 40 minutes about some of the things that I do as a survivor of international human trafficking, specifically between Canada and the United States, and why it's important for the community of Sault Ste. Marie to really pull together with the limited resources that you have, which is, as far as I know, one police officer dedicated to human trafficking in Sault Ste. Marie. I hope that increases because you have quite a problem there in terms of human trafficking. It is a gateway. It's a hot spot, and I know you folks know that. It's not anything that I'm going to impart that kind of new information, nor do I really go through a lot of statistics about human trafficking. Those are things that you all should know anyways. So some of the slides I'm going to skip over, and some of them I'm not. So when we talk about this whole process of colonization, just really briefly, I'm just going to point out the first bullet, and the first bullet because colonization, when we think about it historically, metaphorically, in terms of analysis of what happens with Indigenous people and human trafficking, is the incursion or forced entry into a geographical area. And that can be translated into rape, the rape of Indigenous women, and how that happens, and how colonization participates in the exploitation of Indigenous women. I don't want to get too much into it at all because there's very limited time to do that. The kinds of things that have happened, I mean, when I acknowledged the children who had been recently discovered in the unmarked grave sites, we've only gone through less than a handful of those residential schools, and we're going to find that there were probably a whole lot more than what they have discovered now, and how residential schools participated on creating those destructive effects on our social and cultural structures. So there's a lot of things to unravel, and this in itself of colonization could take about a day to open up discussions over. Personally, I don't really know what Rick or the board wanted, but I'm going to share things and springboard off of what Travis and Mike shared about, you know, some of those things that you may want to consider doing when engaging survivors and people who are entrenched in human trafficking. Why? Because I think it's really important to the survival of who we are, and to building those networks and bridges to health and well-being. Part of why we got our charitable registration status was because of our anti-poverty work that we do, and that's very far-reaching. And so I see some very similarities between what the Police Services Board is doing and the larger community of Sault Ste. Marie in alleviating poverty and getting back to a good, healthy connection with all the constituents of that area. So this is my father. My father went to the Spanish residential school system. I am a first-generation survivor, meaning that I'm the daughter of a survivor that directly went to that school. And as we know, Mary Bell is my auntie, and she's done a lot of work around residential schools and sharing that experience that she had and her siblings had at that school. One of the challenges that we have when we speak our truth is acknowledging that sometimes, and in many of those cases, that our parents become offenders themselves. And my father was one such person. He passed 20 years ago. And this is what remains of his school, or the residential school that he attended. Uh, uh, this is the girls' school. The boys' school was actually right across the street. And this is where the monument, the memorial is. And you'll find that most residential schools have that. And how does this all relate to human trafficking? It's the historical dysfunction that not only is entrenched in our society, but also within our families, that allows for that grooming to happen, and those the lack of support structures to adequately navigate the world that lend themselves to this. Part of that would be the child welfare system, which is where I was trafficked out of through somebody who was a director and owner of two different group homes. I was trafficked from the age of 14 to 17, and it took me to the age of 24 to actually make that absolute break from David and another woman named Sandra. She wasn't necessarily a trafficker. She was part of my exit was going to school. And that's one of the reasons why I talked to the folks at Sioux College, was because one of the professors also took advantage of me in the program that I was in. And that particular professor and coordinator was the founder of the Assaulted Women and Child Advocacy Program. So people in positions of power certainly are able to not only groom and exploit people that they are connected to, of which I was a student, but they're also able to groom people around them. So nobody saw that any kind of exploitation was happening within that context. In fact, they saw me as the problem. So they didn't really understand the behaviors that I was exhibiting, but they saw, you know, this professor, her name is Sandra, was able to create a narrative about what the kind of situation was between her and I, and it created a problem. Similarly, David did the same thing, and you'll see pictures of David further on. So just really quickly, there are some of the stats here. You could read them as I'm talking. I'm going to move on. What I'm going to ask is that I am going to skip through quite a few of these because there's almost 100 slides, but you may read them as I quickly go through them. What I'm going to ask is that I know I am being recorded, is that recording stay within the realm of this meeting, and that it not be taken outside the realm of this meeting, because there's many things that I share, but there's also certain issues of privacy, and also this is how I make my living, is doing presentations like this. So if everything's shared, it's harder to make a living from doing presentations like this. I'm not going to read that. This has to do with how when you're pre-verbal, when children are pre-verbal and they're sexually abused, what that might sound like or come out like. And it's utilizing the arts to explore those. And this is something I did for the thesis that I wrote for my master's. It was a larger 600-page document that I used to graduate from my program. I was exploited by a guy named David Stanley. Well, sometimes at my presentations, people recognize him from way back when. This is what he looked like when I was in his care, when he was trafficking me and other residents of the group homes that he had. He was an extremely powerful man. He was extremely He was extremely smart. And I'm not trying to put him on a pedestal, but I am trying to indicate to you how devious and cunning these people are. He recently died, and I forget what year he died. It was in the last 5 years, and I heard that he had died. But I'm 56 years old, and it was up until about the age of, well, I will be 56 in a few weeks, but I was up to almost the age of 50, where I still kept looking behind my back to see if I was going to run into him anywhere, because it would have been quite possible that I would have run into him. And I always looked up the internet and to see where he might be. And I couldn't find him because I was going by the name of David Stanley or David Youngwolf. And I didn't know that he had changed his name to Wayanate, which means young wolf in the Cherokee language. I didn't know that. And I also didn't recognize him. And I didn't recognize him because he was older, he had long hair. And I had seen his picture and I said, that's not David. And I read about him and it said he was an artist, a carver. And I said, he's not a carver. He's definitely not a carver. So I didn't recognize him, but it took me a while to realize once he had died and had heard that he had died, that I went, holy shit, it's him. It is him. And it was a huge relief, but it was also a huge, like, holy fuck, it's all over, you know, like the story is done, it's over. And that in itself is a process to go through as well. Just knowing that he had died or he would no longer be around, I didn't have to worry about him.
Sheila,
Yep.
can I just interrupt you for a second?
Sure.
I just want to let you know that this is a public meeting, okay?
Yep.
So everything is anybody can come from the community to this meeting. So your information that is being presented is on Sue online as well. So I just wanted to make you aware of that because we are a public organization and our recordings are out to the public, okay?
Okay.
So I wanted you to be aware of that.
Sure. So as I'm speaking to the community members of Sault Ste. Marie, is that anyone can become a victim to human trafficking. So when I'm talking about being apprehended and put into the child welfare system, is that system, just in the way that it functions, can groom children to be vulnerable to human trafficking. And this is why community efforts need to be made to alleviate and eradicate trafficking within the community of Sault Ste. Marie. And I'm saying Sault Ste. Marie because that's who I'm speaking to, is the whole community of Sault Ste. Marie. I have to be clear that I'm not afraid of what I disclose in this PowerPoint, because I have done this PowerPoint in many different venues. What it is that it is that I do go many places and share this information. I'm not afraid of David. I'm not afraid of what people know about David or who he is or who he was. But I will move on to, yeah, this is really neat. So I will move on. And what I will say is that David, like, he's so cunning that he creates many different layers of stories. And one of the people he introduced me to was actually somebody who became an inspiration to me to really get my life together. I was doing drugs, unlimited quantities of cocaine. And he introduced me to a man named Duke Redbird. And part of my out was education. A huge part of my out was education, even though I was exploited by a professor within that educational institution. And what it was is I had seen a degree on his wall, and I asked him what that degree was, and I was 15 at the time. And he said, well, read it. And so I read it, and it said, you know, Masters of Interdisciplinary Studies. And I thought he was brilliant. I thought he was very charismatic and brilliant and just a very intelligent person. And he is a very intelligent person. He's known all over Canada. He's done many different things. And I said, well, how do you get that? Because I attributed it at 15. I thought that the way he was smart was exactly, because he had this piece of paper that said he was smart. And he said, well, you have to go to school for a very, very long time. And I said, well, I'm not going to do that. But it had planted a seed because I really wanted to be that smart. I really wanted to have my life together. I really wanted to have the things that I saw that he had. I thought, I really want to have that respect. I want to be somebody. And so he wasn't the only one that participated in, me building up towards going back to school. There was another guy named John T. Davis, who is a very, he's a well-known musician, particularly in Toronto circles. And I was doing a little summer placement in Regent Park. And he knew I was homeless. He said, you don't have anywhere to go. He said this to me privately, and I looked at him because I knew he knew. He looked at me like he knew. And I said, no, I don't. I had been sleeping on the streets. I had been kicked out of hostels. I was just a train wreck. And he said, I want you to do something. I want you to come here. It was at the Regent Park United Church, which no longer exists. It's been torn down with the kind of gentrification that's been going on in that city. And so I did. I thought, okay, this could go really good or really bad. I don't know this guy. I just know he's here. And he said knock. So later on in the night, I went there and I knocked on the door and he let me in. And he said, just go lie in the pew. I'm going to go sleep on the cot on the stage. I was like, who the heck sleeps on the cot in the stage? Like they have a family to go to. So I got a little bit nervous, but I went on the pew anyways because I didn't really have anywhere else to go. And I put my little backpack under me and a blanket, and I sort of slept with one eye open. And I started to hear this music. Well, obviously he's a musician, right? And it was beautiful music, and I fell asleep with that music playing. And during the course of my placement there and into the summer, occasionally he would let me into the church to sleep because he knew I had nowhere else to go. So he was very instrumental in helping me get my act together. There were other people who I don't have pictures of that were very instrumental as well. And the reason I bring this up is because in spite of the fact that sometimes we say we did it alone, we didn't do it alone. There's people in our lives, and any one of you, and I'm meaning Police Services Board, people who work for other organizations, the general public, who we might make connections with and become very important in our lives. And you may never get a thank you. We may never see you again, but we'll remember you and we'll go, this person was a good person to me. One was Susanna, and who's passed on now. She passed away from cancer. The other one was Trinica. She was a counselor of mine at the time that I was being trafficked and in that group home. And the other one was Lori. And Lori is a very renowned therapist from Toronto who's done training for police across the country and internationally. Her name is Dr. Lori Haskell. And she's done a lot of really amazing work with me, even when other people in her, where she first started out, said to her, don't even bother trying. She's street smart, a drug user, grew up in the system, and she's one of those people. She's native, a write-off, let her go. Well, how do I know this? Well, I know this because it was my aunt that connected me to her. And they went to school together. So as part of their own education within OISE, they had, classes on, case conferencing and whatnot. And this came up, and it was in fact me that they were discussing. But, when we think about our cultural connections, and I don't want to spend too much time on this either because I know we're limited, is that these are our stages of life. from the Anishinaabe perspective is the good life, the fast life, wandering life, truth life, planning life, doing life, and elder life. And of course, the stage I was in that wandering life. And that was that wandering life that was very confusing, because I had to travel back in time to really understand where things went wrong and how they went wrong, and what were my experience within those structures that caused me to go astray. And some of those were lacks of things. So lacks of love, lack of respect, and learning respect, and understanding truth and memory, actually, what it is to be brave and to hold brave spaces for people. So one of the things that you are doing today is holding a brave space for somebody like me to come and talk, to share, to encourage you to keep on with the work that you're doing, and creating those good relationships between police and the community and other social organizations that work towards social health and well-being. I don't want to go into this too much, but I will say this is key to what I do in Thunder Bay and Northwestern Ontario, is springboard off of these needs in engaging the youth that I do engage with a variety of facilitators that I trust. And I think that we will work well with the youth that we work with, anywhere from the ages of 14 to 29. And again, we have our clan systems as well that help. When we think about enculturation and we think about our connection to culture, that connection is so strong that it actually can help facilitate new neural pathways and healing, health and well-being among people who have been trafficked or been victims of violence, and so on and so forth. Oh boy, we go on and on and on about these beautiful gifts and promise and potential. And when we pull our groups together, we do talk about gifts, promise, and potential, about our natural ability and talents, the assurance that we'll have positive outcomes, and that we can reach our strength, our true strength, our true potential. So these are very important ingredients to the work we do here in Northwestern Ontario. And how do we do this? I mean, it's on the PowerPoint. You can read it by observation, interaction, exercises, sketch pads, Lego, theater, musical expression. We got a donation a few years back from a very famous folk singer, Danielle Lenoir, of musical equipment to help us in our program. And he's been an amazing support to all of us. And of course, James Baldwin did describe in his writings about when we can describe an emotion, it no longer has power over us. And it's in that description, it can be verbal, and many times it's not, how emotion affects a person's life. And we use those tools of theater, music, sketch pads, mask making, to be able to have young people express what's going on for them. So I'm just going to, oh, that's really important too. So just so you know that these, the pictures that are used in here have been signed off by the youth themselves, if they're old enough, their student support workers or their parents or guardians. So they're not just random pictures that I decided to throw into a PowerPoint presentation. Sometimes when you engage youth, that they'll show up, but they need to protect themselves, and they do it in a variety of ways. Sometimes they'll face a wall, sometimes they'll cover themselves up in blankets or tablecloths. And all we need to know, and they can stay like that. They are allowed to stay like that because it's within their safety zone. And so all we need is an acknowledgement that they're with us, so they can move their hip, or they can, put their hand up and say, yeah, I'm still with you. But we're not going to cause an environment that would make them feel unsafe. So what do? We have fun with them. And so when they see that we're having fun, they are having fun too. So part of the ability to have people change is to ensure that there is fun included in those activities. People are more receptive to change when they're having fun. And so I liked what Mike and Travis said when they were talking about activities for youth and very positive activities, because it's through the interactions of the community members with the young people that will allow those connections to be made. And we know psychologically that attachments and positive connections are really important to the positive development of our young people. And so what we've done, and I also believe in non-formal education. I don't think that all youth are meant to go to school. I say that honestly, and some people might raise their eyebrows and say, well, of course they need to go to school. Well, school, in terms of like the education system that we have, I saw that slide about, find other ways of working with young people rather than suspend them. That's the best thing you could do, to suspend somebody who doesn't want to go to school, because they have permission at that point to say, well, I don't have to go, I got suspended. So we took a cross Canada tour from Thunder Bay to BC to Cortez Island to go through a peace building through music workshop. And how we did that is one of the youth saw something on the internet with one of our facilitators facilitating that workshop and said, can I go? And I said, well, we don't really have the funds to do that. So I said, probably not. I said, find out from Morley if there's anything that we can do to make that happen. As it turns out, Morley called me in the meantime and says, can you guys come? And I said, well, we might be able to get 2 or 3, and that's only if we get scholarships. So we were able to get partial scholarships and went. We funded the rest of it. The other one is through Lego, Lego Serious Play. So I am a facilitator of that, and I have other facilitators up in this region that help people build story through Lego. And they build their stories. All these people, all these folks that participated in this one, all had the same pieces, and look how different their story comes out. Like, they're not the same. So it's creating story, and through their mask making, Lego, music, play, and we don't ask them to do anything that we wouldn't do. So they're making masks, and so are we. And it's important that we engage in that creative process as well, because if we're doing the top-down approach, it doesn't work. I'm definitely here to tell you that. Some people say, well, we don't get people to our offices. People don't come to our office. They don't come for counseling, or they don't come to community events. And I said, well, do you go to them? They said, no. I said, you need to go out to them. Well, I said, our policy says we can't. And I said, change your policy, because they won't come to you unless you go to them. You need to be on their turf, right? On our turf. That's how we make those connections. And also voice and presence is important as well. So have them, don't you be the one at the flip chart. Invite them up to write things down, to share their narrative, to share their story. Talk about tools for stress, for health and well-being that they can use, that are practical and easy for them to do. Again, our musical instruments came from a gracious donor. And we also make things, have tools made, like drums with clans and colors. Another important ingredient to health and well-being is affirmations. Affirmations are so important, and I mean ongoing daily affirmations. And I ask them when I see the young people at the community garden that we have, is have you done your daily affirmations? What's going on? How do you feel today? Do you feel good? Are you feeling successful? Let's do an affirmation, man, because it's really important. And it sounds hokey. It sounds like, oh yeah, right, whatever. No, man, do it. do it because it's so important that people hear good things, because when you say things out loud, you remember it and it becomes part of your physical well-being. Your body remembers it. These are proven things. It's not like I'm pulling things out from a magic hat. These are things that have been studied and researched, and for those who need that kind of scientific evidentiary proof. But there's also indigenous ways of knowing that tell us this as well, through stories and other ways. So again, we give them sketch pads to write things while we're, or draw, while we're going through our workshops on stress management, anti-violence, and anti-bullying, Minoba Matsuin, gambling. All of these workshops are very important. And so you can see that this young person is swimming out or swimming back, you know, from a deep ocean, and you could see the hope that is written in those words that she's seeing. You know, she's experiencing, feel warmth, feel sun. She can feel that things are moving and changing for her. Where it was deep waters and cold and probably very scary, they're able to come back and go, you know, I can feel things changing. Again, here around self-growth, the colors are very important too as well, understanding the colors and the meaning of color in their lives. Again, we let them, you know, this is a very creative process. So we don't dictate to them what they have to draw. They just doodle. This is doodle for them. And some of them are pretty amazing artists. So that is part of identifying gifts, is being able to walk around the room with them and say, wow, that's, you have a gift for art. You have a gift for creativity. You have a creative mind. Let's put that to use. And both boys and girls, we or young men and young women, we engage, and you can see that they really are into the process of taking the time to write things down for themselves, so that they remember, that they can recall. Recall is very important to the creating new neural pathways in the brain. Relaxation. So we do a thing called Afro Flow Yoga, although not indigenously connected to culture. There is a connection to African diaspora, and so what we have done, and because the youth like it, is they often call upon these folks from Boston to come up and engage the young people in this process, along with the workshops and songwriting. And they do get right into their this process because they like it. And if they like something, they're gonna participate in it. And it helps them find a baseline of calm for themselves, so they know what it is to feel, so that it's not stressful. And they come here, and the primary reason that they identified about 4 or 5 years ago for them coming to these workshops is to get away from their homes. And many of them are in boarding homes while they attend school in Thunder Bay. And why? Because these images are splashed everywhere. You know, they're on their phones, they're on social media, and we feel a need to inform them and also protect them from some of these dangers that are out there as much as we can. And we can see the impacts that it has on them. That they're more cautious when they're on social media and they're on the land, being with each other. The bottom two, with folks in the canoe, is that neither one of them are comfortable on the water. And so we had a conversation with them about, you know, being on the water and what the water means to them, and you know, where they were at. And there was a part of them that was hugely curious about how they would manage on the water. And so the other participants went off and paddled around an island and came back, and they said, just paddle in the bay. If you want to try it, just paddle in the bay. And so they did. They didn't go too far out. Just is actually where that picture is as far out as they went. But they enjoyed it. They said they felt it was good. And so it was a new experience, and it was a very positive experience. And finding those those creative ways of engaging young people in new experiences is also a good way to connect. Same with some of the traditional teachings and teaching bundles that we have. This is on fire keeping, and some of the young people went through some of those exercises. You know, some of those teachings, and they really valued those teachings, to be able to sit in a circle and share and learn about culture. Because some of our northern communities they don't practice that in this way. They can live off the land for sure, and that's culture. But in terms of teachings and smudging, I went to a group of young kids in in kindergarten, in grade 1, and they didn't know what smudging was, because they don't do that in their community. And the other thing we do is contemporary things. So although gambling and gaming can be a challenge, many of them have been involved in gambling. In fact, 100% of the participants 4 years ago had gambled in their life. And I would say about 98% of them are gamers. And so when we have the workshops, we allow for them to game. They can game there and enjoy each other's company. And as long as it doesn't become a problem, then we don't have to, have different rules, ground rules set out. And it has actually never become a problem since 2016. Again, the Cross Canada tour was very important. We stopped at the Riel Monument, Stony Mountain Prison, the Humboldt Memorial. They actually got to see the ocean, and some of those things that they had practiced over the last 4 years or so, they practiced when they were out there. They practiced that mindfulness. And when they have regular practicing of these tools, then they use them on their own. And this young person just sat for quite a long time in front of the ocean, because they really wanted to experience that feeling around being so close to the ocean. They never ever dreamed they would ever leave Ontario. They all three of them thought, I'm never going to leave Ontario. I'm never even going to leave Thunder Bay. And I had told them a few years before, you will experience things and go places that you never dreamed you would go. Their next, actually prior to going to the ocean, one of the big things they wanted to see was the mountains, because they had never seen the mountains. So they got to see those too, because it was, again, a Cross Canada tour, across the mountains, to learn how to play, as young people again, what it was like to put their feet in the ocean and feel what that's like. I want to go take your shoes off, go in the ocean, just the same way as you take your shoes off and you go in the garden. Take your shoes off and put your feet in the ocean and experience that, because you don't know when you're going to come back. And so the local people, I always like the local people, the 3 N's. So it's always nice to see famous role models in our community, in non-member nations, because they shoot straight. They say, no one's going to do it for you. And particularly Ted, he says, no one's going to do it for you. You have to, there's people around to support you, but you have to use those tools and do it yourself, right? Hone those skills. And that's what I like about them, is they're able to articulate that, really straight, that you got to work hard to get where you're going, with the support of those around you. And the other thing is, again, what I'm saying about positive affirmations, they're not always affirmations that are written on a flip chart. Sometimes they do creative ways of doing those affirmations to each other, and writing things like, you're important to me because, or you make me smile because you are who you are. These are very important things. And so when we are thinking about these gifts, promise, and potential, I went into one community and they said, well, we know our gifts. And I was like, well, great. I wasn't just there with myself. I was there with another facilitator. And they said, we're singers and we drum. I was like, pull out the drum, man. Let's go. Wow, they were good. They were amazing. And it was such an inspiration to see that they knew what their gifts were at such a young age. and they practiced it, and they had their little group together. These are grown young men now. They're a lot older than they are in this picture. Caring, they create their own videos now, and they sent one of their videos to Attawapiskat when Attawapiskat was having a challenge with suicide. So they sent their video of hope to them, and it was quite a profound experience. Again, as a survivor of international human trafficking, I participate in different roundtable discussions, different consultations, and here with other survivors and other key players in that. And here we're with Julie Bindel, who's a woman from the UK who's done a lot of work in the women's movement. It's an international, experience, I guess, to meet other survivors and do the work that we do, to engage young people and to be with people to help them find their way, because they need a lot of support. This is a huge age of technology, and still going through those growing challenges of puberty and understanding that wandering life. They're wondering, like, where do I fit in this whole world? Where do I go when there's so many challenges around me? Again, some of the men put on a Christmas banquet. We couldn't have one that last year. We may not have one this year because of COVID. So, but it's good to know that there are good, kind people out there that are able to put something together for us as survivors. And there was an experiential voices gathering. I do believe it was right across Canada. And this was the one that we had in Thunder Bay, where we all got together and were nurtured by elders who are from our various communities. And this is, again, is a picture of one of the young people from a community who was in her skirt and drumming, bare hands, in minus 35-degree weather that year. And she was drumming for all of us. And to be that young, I mean, I didn't do that when I was 15. I was, really being exploited. But it's good to see these young people create good spaces for themselves that they know will bring about their own feeling good and health and well-being. This is one of the final slides. It's about a young person who wrote a poem about, meant to be something more. We're all meant to be something more, including our communities. Our communities are meant to be something more than what they are. We can create healthy, vibrant communities, and it takes every citizen to create a healthy community, and Sault Ste. Marie being one of them. It takes every community within communities to help create those spaces of safety, nonviolence, positivity, which includes our First Nation communities, especially in that area of Sault Ste. Marie, so Rankin and Garden River. So I think I'm going to leave you with that, because I know I've been going on quite a while, and I see it's 2:15, and I know you have to carry on with your meeting. There's a lot of information. I could come back in September. They had mentioned there might be some time in September where I could come back and share a bit more. I'm happy to have been here and shared what I was able to share in the short amount of time that I was able to. And I hope that the whole community, the board and organizations that are attending this public meeting are able to garner something from this and get some ideas of what they might be able to do to help participate in the creation of a safe community of Sault Ste. Marie. Miigwech.
Thank you, Sheila. Are there any comments or questions?
John, Christian speaking here. Sheila, I just want to thank you very much for sharing your story. I appreciate it, and it's valuable. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Ian?
I think that was a beautiful, there was more than one beautiful story. It was one story after another. But more importantly, for me, an immigrant for over 50 years, I can say thank you. I understand a little more about what some of our native brethren have had to go through. Thank you very much and God bless you.
Miigwech, thank you so much.
Anyone else?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sheila. Really appreciate it. And there's a lot of positive youth activities happening here in Sault Ste. Marie. And one in particular is Indigenous led. It's called Youth Odina, led by Cecilia Trahan, who I've been her mentor for many years. So there is some positive things coming, and I'll definitely let Cecilia know that we got to experience your conversation and really, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Chief?
Sheila, as Chief of Police, I want to let you know and assure you that all of your stories and your experiences are taken to heart. In my previous role as Director of Criminal Intelligence Service Ontario, you're probably familiar that the previous Liberal provincial government put a lot of funding into organized crime and its dealing with human trafficking. We set up coordinators, and we set up a lot of roles within policing and the Ministry of Community and Social Services. And one thing I learned from that experience is that policing in and of itself will never solve this. You need the whole community, as you talked about.
Yeah.
The Indigenous community, the social services community, like Mike previously commented on, because the victims of this are not solved by a prosecution. The victims need that support and that 2-3 year post traumatic incidents when we try to pull them out of that cycle of violence. And that was one thing I learned, and I hear it in your stories as well, that, you know, this is a total community response to victims of human trafficking, and that it takes a lot of time and effort on all institutions to stop this at the beginning stages as well as after they've been involved in it. So I personally want to thank you for your dedication, for your ability to open up your life and educate us on that. And I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I absolutely agree with you about it being a community effort. And yeah, thank you for your words.
And Rick?
John, and thank you, John. And Sheila, again, I know I listened to you intently for the much longer presentation when you came to Sioux College, but I wanted to thank you again, because what struck me even for the second time is just that when we talk about human sex trafficking or any crime, we're thinking, you know, oftentimes on a macro level, and we're, you know, in fact, the chief very shortly will go through statistics for the community. And we think in terms of large numbers, and it's important for us to do that. But what I really find valuable, and what I want to thank you for, just beyond even today's presentation, is that, you know, you put a human face, you know, you're a human being that experienced this, and you sharing those stories really help us to just understand that even people that are out there committing these crimes are often people who are using their positions to shield their crimes, and are, you know, often have titles that might appear to they wouldn't be involved in this kind of thing. And so that's what I found when we did your stories, that the very people that we should entrust sometimes can be the perpetrators of crime. Obviously, that's not the majority, but they, you know, they do hide in those spots. And I thought that was a very important piece of your presentation again, and so I appreciate that. And finally, the piece that I really love about your story is just how you found a way out and how you're now helping others, which is probably the best part of this story too, is that you're just, you know, dedicated this part of your, you know, all those stages of life, the doing part of your life, and the elder part of your life of helping others. And so I applaud that, and thank you again for speaking to us today. Very appreciated.
Thank you so much, Rick. It It was great being here today with you folks.
And Sheila, thank you. It took us a little while to get organized and get you on, but it was well worthwhile. I thank you again, and we may be in touch in the near future. And certainly, we thank you for showing the way, because having an educational background as well, the children of today need to hear those stories, and the stories are beautiful. And I thank you again.
Oh, miigwech. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
And you're welcome to stay, or you, as I said to the previous, I'm sure it might not be, might get a little boring at times, so thank you.
Yeah, yeah, I'll depart, but thank you so much for having me, and
Okay.
have a good meeting.
Okay, thank you, Sheila.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. If you go to your agenda, number 9 is where we're at. Communication and reports, information only from the chief. We'll start off with special account ledger.
Thank you, John. So nothing new on your account ledger. There are no significant changes there to report on. We go to our overtime, which is that one there. Thank you, Lincoln. We had a very busy month of May. As you know, we had 2 homicides, 1 attempt, a number of firearm offenses, all that being dealt with, 2 criminal investigation teams, and 3 major incidents. So I say that because when we look at overtime between 2020 in May and our current 21 May, we went from 81 to 144. And that is all primarily overtime related to major incidents. When we look at where we are in our running total, it's good news. This time last year, we were at 460, and right now we're at 449. So we are still under what our overtime was last year. We go to the next slide. You can see in terms of our 3-year monthly staff shortage overtime costs. In 20, as far as overtime goes, we were 26. This month in May, we were 69, but your next one shows in terms of the actual shortage overtime costs monthly. You can see we went from 15,000 in patrol to in May 6,900. So our shortages weren't due, our overtime wasn't due to staff shortages. It was due to workload. People working longer hours, the same folks, but not people that couldn't come into work. When you go to the next slide there, you're going to see our budget on track. Did I see a hand up? Sorry, no, we're all good. Okay. We are about 9% over where we were last year in terms of our total budget. We're at 59.1 spent. This time last year, we were at 50.84. And again, those increases are simply due to, you know, the 2 murders, the attempt murder, and numerous weapon calls. You saw from our presentation last month, we were 700 or 800% over on our weapon calls when we compared year to date on a 5-year analysis. So it is a busy time, and we've talked about that before. Moving on to 9 Foxtrot, which is our statistical outlay. The first we're going to talk about is our April to April comparative analysis from 20 to 21. And you'll see that overall occurrences, if we look at the month alone, is up 3.9%. When we look at crimes of violence, we see assaults are relatively stable at between 44 and 46 incidents. Crimes of property, overall B&Es are up 9% from 72 to 79. When we see the other there, that's break and enters to sheds and outlying sort of buildings on properties went from 4 to 14, which is the 250, but you have to see it is from 4 to 14. Theft of motor vehicles is down from 14 to 12. Theft overall for the month was 138 to 166, which shows a 20% increase. Shoplifting went from 8 to 50 in that month at 525%. That is significant, obviously. When we look at sudden deaths, we went from 9 to 13. Motor vehicle collisions, springtime up 31%. Bail violations from 36 to 43, which is 19%. And Mental Health Act calls for service up 30%. Now, when we go to the year-to-date analysis, which, as I've always said, is a little more of a thorough analysis of our data, we see that we're actually calls for service have maintained their level at 1.4% year-to-date April. We see robberies are up from 25 to 30. In incidents are 20%. Sex assaults are down 41%. But the big news here in crimes of property, we see that break and enter totals are down 23%. Businesses are down 68%, i.e. from 88 incidents to 28 incidents. When we look at theft of motor vehicle, we'll see we went from 55 to 38, down 31. Theft of or attempt thefts are down 50%, well, that was 2 to 1. Thefts overall are down about 8%. Theft from motor vehicles, which we get complaints from the community quite constantly, are down about 37%. Mischiefs and frauds are all down. So that's showing that the crimes of property, if we look at it statistically from January to April, both years, are statistically significantly down in terms of crimes of property. Sudden deaths down from 45 to 40. Motor vehicle collisions are also down 30%. The answer there is there was less people driving given the lockdowns in the last 4 months of the year. So that is the statistics in a nutshell.
Questions, comments? Okay, continue.
Prince Township statistics, 7 for April, 29 year to date. Nothing significant jumping out there. We go to our provincial offense notice material. We see of interest in the Highway Traffic Act, the second column there, we went from 9 charges in April to 22. Those are offenses relating to permits and licenses on the highway. Another one that I know is important to the community is speeding. I know we've had a number of councillors call about speeding in certain areas of the city, and we've went from 42 provincial offense notices to 78, almost doubling it in the month of May to show that we're out there and we are monitoring speed, and we are working with the city in terms of speed signs, working with different community associations and individuals about how we can, not only from an enforcement perspective, but from a traffic management perspective, slow vehicles down. We also have an increase from 35 to 62 on miscellaneous type of provincial offense notices. And those relate to rules of the road, equipment, loads and dimensions, how they store their loads when they're going to the dump, for example, and fifth line, those type of incidents. So those are the provincial offense notice summaries.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions, comments on any of the reports?
We go to the next, we're dealing with 9 hotel public complaints. We can see 7 new complaints in 21. Of those, 2 are closed and 4 are ongoing. When we go to the bottom of the report, you'll see last year this time we had 17. This year we have 22, so we're up a little bit. Some of these are the same person with multiple complaints as well. In terms of use of force, 9 India, we see it does speak to the issues that we're dealing with in terms of use of force and lethal force options. If you look at April and May on incidents, we went from 6 to 14. Number of reports, we went from 6 to 29. In firearms pointed, which is serious, we went from 3 in April to 20 in May. In terms of CEW, again, our conducted energy weapon in the second column there, we went from 3 to 11. So obviously our members are following the use of force that has been taught at Ontario Police College. And each time a use of force is issued, a report is put in to outline the circumstances by which that member used their discretion and judgment. Travel log, all budgeted for. As you can see, a couple high-priced tickets there is the tactical officer's course. And we continue as a service to invest in our people in terms of training. Training is something that doesn't go away, whether you're in a pandemic or otherwise. We have to invest in our people for the safety of the public and our own members. That's the end of my report, Mr. Chair, for the open.
Yes, any questions, comments? Thank you, Chief.
John, just,
Yes,
I
Mr.
I
Mayor.
understood at the end of Travis's presentation, I think they were looking for the resolution of support prior to the matter going to council on Monday. If the
Right.
board isn't comfortable passing one this meeting, I'm completely fine with that. And you could determine to pass it next meeting, but I just to get to his ask, I don't think he was asking for one in the future. I think he was asking for one today, but I'll leave it to the board's discretion whether it's.
Thank you for reminding me. I have it written down just basically, and maybe Sarah can help me here. A resolution that the community safety and well-being plan be endorsed by the Sault Ste. Marie Police Services Board. If there's anything else that should be included in that? Any questions or comments?
I think it's pretty straightforward. And I'm fine with that resolution.
Okay.
With two members of council on the board, do they have to declare a conflict? Is it still to go to the council, Lisa and Christian?
Well, no, I don't see a conflict. I certainly don't feel like I'm in a conflicted position.
No, and I'm part of the Social Equity Committee as well that made recommendations. So I don't see a conflict either. We're not personally benefiting. It's a report. If anything, we're supporting it as our role here and then would support it in our other role as council and mayor.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you. Seeing no other questions or comments, Sarah, could you read that before we get a mover and a seconder?
Okay. Resolved that the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan be endorsed by the Sault Ste. Marie Police Services Board.
Mover?
I'll move that, John.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. All in favor? Approved. Chief, if you could communicate that to the Goma leadership table.
Absolutely.
Then our job will be done there. Thank you. Any other business? Okay, our next meeting is September the 30th, as we usually do take the July and August off for meetings, public meetings, and so September 30th, 2021. Can I have a mover and a seconder to adjourn the open? Then we will take a 5-minute break and start the closed session.
Also
Mover,
move.
Ian, moved, seconded by
I'll second it, John.
Mr. Mayor. Thank you. All in favor? Approved. That the regular meeting is adjourned, that the board enters into the caucus meeting in 5 minutes, which will be at 2:42. Thank you. And thank you to the media and all the guests.